Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Window to Origin, a series by Condesa Co.Lab dedicated to providing unique and intimate insights into the world of coffee growing, production, and processing. My name's Harry, and I'm here today with Camilo Merizalde from the Santuario Project. In his many, many years working in the coffee industry, Camilo has pioneered coffee production across multiple countries with a strong focus on biodiversity, sustainability, and replicability of specialized processing and fermentation techniques. Welcome, Camilo. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. My pleasure being here.
Great to see you.
Thanks.
So I guess we should probably start at the start. How did you get into coffee in the first place? What made you start off in coffee generally and specialty coffee specifically?
Okay, basically it was the desire to create a very unique coffee farm in Colombia with the traditional quality that we used to have back in the 70s and 80s. Everything, the beginning actually was when I was working with this food company in Colombia during the late 90s. I started visiting clients in USA and Europe, and many people, they kept asking me for good quality coffees. I was basically searching for food to bring to Colombia, but they were asking me for good quality coffees to import, to the States or to Europe. Being Colombia was really difficult to understand because back then I was totally convinced that we had this beautiful quality coming out of Colombia, but the reality was totally different. I started visiting many stores during my trips, and they kept saying the same. We are looking for good quality. Colombia, they change some of the varieties into more productive varieties, so the quality start coming down. One of the main things that I did in Colombia during my time that I was in Colombia, I started visiting one of the local FNC, the Coffee Federation in Colombia, in Popayan, where we had this farm that actually we had a little bit of coffee, but not really specialized coffee. And they told me the reality. They said that Colombia was moving from the old Bourbon and the old Típicas into the new productive and more resistance to Roya and all these new diseases into the coming to coffee. So during the next visits that I did to Europe, to the States, I started doing like a project to build like this unique specialty coffee farm. And finally, after 2 years, I came to Colombia. I hired an agronomist, and we put everything together, basically the layout of the farm. I create a marketing presentation that I start showing this to my clients. So I start getting a lot of feedback that at the end helped me create the Santuario in Popayan. And after that, many people, they asked me where I got my seeds. They came from Huila, the Típicas, and the Bourbons, from these very, very, high areas, traditional areas. And some of the new varieties, the geishas, the laurinas, some of the Típicas, some of the, actually I have Libericas at the farm. They came from this FNC experimental garden that they used to have, and that they gave me all these seeds. But basically, it took me 2 years to do the whole process and create the farm.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you think that coming from outside of coffee and moving into it, I guess as an active choice, it gave you a very different perspective on coffee production versus, say, particularly somewhere like Colco, where Santuario is based. The very strong patrimony of coffee being handed down from one family member to the next, and there's a very strong tradition, I guess, familiar tradition of coffee, and it might be done one way, and that's the way to do it. Do you think that's giving you a different insight and different perspective on how to produce coffee?
Yeah, totally. Because actually, I went to school for finance and business administration. So when I start with coffee, I had no idea about coffee. But at the end, I was able to, to hire excellent people to work with me. And it took me 2 years to actually understand the necessity of a good farm in Colombia to bring the quality that people, they were looking for, for good coffees from Colombia. And one of the things that actually happened during that time was, at the time, coffee prices, they were like at 40 cents per dollar. They kept saying that I was totally crazy getting into a business that prices were so low. But at the end, I just told them, prices are low, but they are gonna go up again. And many people that they are, selling coffee right now, they're going through a lot of difficulties. So by the time that I have my farm ready, actually, I'm gonna have like the market coming from Colombia is gonna be better for me because I won't have that many competition coming out.
Yeah, it's very true. It ties in really nicely actually with a question from Sada, who was asking, she wanted to know, with climate change and particularly volatile market prices discouraging new producers and next generation of producers from staying with coffee, what can be done, or what do you think can be done to encourage more people to seek a career in production?
Actually, knowing for me, it's a big challenge because we work in 4 different countries. We work in Colombia, Brazil, Costa Rica, and Mexico. But each country or region has a different challenge. Climate is really big in Central America right now. They had many hurricanes. They have a lot of deforestation. They have, social conflicts. Everything is diminishing, the good conditions for growing coffee into the future. So Central America, it's going to be a big challenge. It's difficult to say what can we actually do to help the people. The way that I'm helping is creating good projects, hiring a lot of people. We have between Costa Rica and Mexico, we employ at least 100, 150 people. And sometimes we even have like 200 people for each country when we have the harvest time. Having people from traditional farms, when they want to actually just give their farms to the younger people, it's really difficult because at the end, some of them, they just want to move, to the big cities, work because they see the future that is not going to be really bright for them. On the other hand, we have Brazil, which is amazing. Good climate conditions, but they have the frost condition, which is difficult because, every year during summertime, they get, the winter time for them actually is at the end, is at the beginning of the harvest. So many times they get frost. But besides that, the economy in Brazil is so big around coffee that many people, they are proud jumping into coffee production, like their families, they have been doing it. In Brazil, you see third generation people, 200 years working on the same farms. So I don't see that climate is going to affect. They have been moving from regular coffees into specialty, so they can actually have better value for their products. Colombia is totally different. Colombia, we have almost 1 million people working on coffee, but actually we only have maybe, I can say 50, 100 people with big farms like myself that we can actually, create businesses that we can inherit, to our next generations. But besides that, we have almost 900,000 people, small farmers. They only have 1 hectare, and basically they have been doing this for centuries because this is all they have. Climate conditions in Colombia are really good. We are right next to the equator line, which is, it's really easy to manage. But even though, you know, we have seen a lot of rains here in Colombia, but yeah, at the end, we need good products to get better prices and to have the people working on coffee.
Absolutely. Yeah, as you said, it's a very complicated issue. You know, there's thousands of different answers for you know, every different area. It's not a panacea, sort of one size fits all response. But for the first sort of 10 minutes or so, we were talking to Camilo Merizalde, the producer. We should probably just define between you as a producer and, you know, owner of Finca Santuario in Colombia, but then also Camilo Merizalde, the director of the Santuario Project, which works across 4 different countries at the moment. So I guess that ties in nicely with a question from John Kay, who wanted to know what made you want to start the Santuario Project in the first place. But also if you can just give everyone a little bit of a background on the Santuario Project, what it is, where it works. Yeah, tell us a bit more about it.
Okay, good. After we worked in Colombia until 2010, we actually, you know, we saw the opportunity to move to new places. The first place that I moved to was Costa Rica because I had a good friend from school in the States that he actually called me one day and he said, Camilo, you know, we have this beautiful farm in Costa Rica. Can we do the same that you're doing in Colombia here? And I said, yes. So we started working in Costa Rica. It's been almost 11 years. We have Tres Milagros, which is a farm in the Dota Tarrazú area. And we have a new process center called Fatima, milling facility. So from Fatima, we have also coffees from Dota. 2 years after we moved to Costa Rica, we started in Brazil, 2012, with a good friend from Carmo Coffees, Luis Paulo. We built Santuario Azul, which is actually a copy from Santuario in Colombia. So basically, we took a portion of my land and we put it in Brazil. So we have 28 different varieties in Brazil. We have yellow Bourbons. We do the same processes, and we have been working in Brazil for almost 10 years. Then 4 years ago, I teamed up with Teddy Steve from Ecom Group, and we start the Santuario Project, which is actually a new company that handles all the activities in all the countries. And basically, we created so we can give a better service to our clients. We can have, you know, better logistics for our coffees, and our idea is to start going into Africa. It's been 20 years, but they seem like it's been only, you know, minutes because, you know, we had so much work that it's been amazing.
No, that's amazing. I mean, it's an incredible project, and it's amazing to see how much you've grown in that, you know, that amount of time. I think it's an interesting thing as well that you know, going back to you were talking a bit earlier about you know, the people that work with you, you know, the number of people who work with you at different origins, to sort of distinguish between some of the single farms like Tres Milagros in Costa Rica, but then you also have these regional processing centers, which will take cherry from lots of producers in the area and then homogenize all of the post-harvest processing to improve quality and ultimately prices as well for local coffee producers in the area too. But I also think this kind of leads us nicely into the processing side of the projects. Logistics and aside, I think the processing is definitely the most exciting thing for people watching. And we've had quite a few people wanting to know a little bit more about some of the processing techniques you use. It's definitely fair to say they're cutting edge and you know, produce some really amazing profiles and amazing qualities. So Ian was asking, how are you managing picking and fermentation in regards to time and volume? I.e., how do you manage high volume fermentation? Because that's definitely one thing that I'm always amazed by is that not only is the quality of the coffees that come out of the project incredible, but the volumes that you're able to produce of that quality is mind-boggling. So how do you do it?
Yeah, That's kind of tricky, but we have learned, how to do it because, again, each country, we have a different challenge. And going back to what you were saying, of the people that actually they supply coffees to us, I'm just going to go over Costa Rica just to have an example. In Costa Rica, everything is processed at Fatima mill. And in Fatima, we receive all the coffees from Tres Milagros farm, but we also receive coffees from 20 different producers that they are in the Santuario Project. So they are, and one of the nicest things this year is that we have seen how proud they are to be part of Santuario. So actually, they say to everyone that they are part of Santuario. So it's really amazing for me to see that right now. And basically, what we do is every day we process no more than 20,000 kilos of cherries because we have the actual recipe for that. So, and what we do is we every day we take this amount of cherries, we select the process, but based on what we did, the last year, we do the process this year. So, for example, if we are doing a natural anaerobic coffee 96 hours, and we know that at least we're gonna need 1,000 bags for that or 500 bags. So we keep producing during 4 or 5 days the same product, and then we basically at the end we cup each lot, and then we select what lots can we actually merge together in order to create this exact this product. And we do it in every place, and at the end is basically knowing the ratio, knowing the actual process that we do, and selecting the varieties that you want to use.
Oh, it's amazing. On that, selecting the varieties you want to use, Patrick was asking, how do you decide on, outside of having orders, but how did you decide on processing techniques to use on particular coffees? Is it trial and error over harvest, or do you know that, red honey works well with Typica, for example? How did you kind of come to the conclusions you've got to so far?
First, marketing research. Second, the flavor and the social preference of each country that we work. So we have been doing this for 20 years, so we have a lot of info that we can apply into that. Third, we have the clientele needs. Every year we get people like you guys asking us, we need this coffee. So we have actually, I'm taking notes every single day of my life in order to have the proper products, for our clients. Then trends, the industry. Then, the feedback again. We're getting a lot of feedback that is actually helping us to create the new processes. And many times it's like the vision that we have into the future. For example, you have seen that so many new coffees coming out of Colombia that we didn't have, but actually they were created because we envision these flavors into some of our clients. What we sell to Australia or to Japan, we don't even offer them to the States because they don't like, these anaerobic, flavors. And at the end, everything needs to be financially viable because we have done a lot of fermentation real expensive, but only a few people, they actually order them, especially every year. We have cold fermentation, which is basically, we need to rent containers, reefer containers, in order to do these fermentations. But they cost a lot of money, but some people they pay it. But at the end, takes like I mentioned, like 7 different things that we that we actually go for before processing our coffees.
Well, there's an awful lot that goes into it. I mean, it's really great that you've got quite a diverse set of clients across the world with different flavor preferences. I always find that interesting speaking to you about how, you know, something that works in Australia won't work in Russia, and something that'll work in the Middle East won't work here. I guess it's there's a coffee for everyone, and it's a matter of finding, you know, the right coffee for the right person.
Exactly.
Yeah. This is something that a few people have asked me, definitely since we started bringing this coffee in. But you know, Rose was asking, what does the black lime honey process involve? This is definitely one of our favorites from your farm in Colombia last year. So it'd be great to hear about, you know, without giving too much away, how do you make it?
Actually, it's a secret, Rose. So that's all I can say for now on. No, I'm kidding. It's a lot of work doing this coffee, and we're coming with new coffees that I'm sending the list next week. They're going to be really amazing as well. And basically, Rose, I'm going to take you through the whole black lime process that takes me between 28 to 32 days, maybe in 2 minutes. So basically a month is going to be condensed in 2 minutes. First, we harvest the cherries very sweet. The sweetness, we measure them, so they need to be at least 22 points on the Brix meter. Then we take the cherries and we soak the cherries 6 hours on water. So, and going back to the quantity of coffee that we can do on the black lime, we're able only to do it with 5,000 kilos of cherry. So for us, doing this special process takes a lot of more time because we don't have the actual equipment to do really big lots. So we have to do batches and then mix them, cup them, and select the quality. Then after the 6 hours of on water, we take them out and we do the initial anaerobic fermentation of the actual cherries for 96 hours. We add Mossto. What is Mossto? Mossto is basically a juice that comes from coffee, and that later I can explain that because it takes some time to do it. Then after the coffee is fermented with Mossto for 96 hours, we depulp the coffee and we leave at least 55% of the mucilage, which is the actual juice within the cherry in the coffee. So the coffee is more like, it's not dry, but it's really juicy right now. Then we take this coffee and we do the second anaerobic fermentation for 42 hours, and we add Mossto again. What do we do Mossto and Mossto? Because the sweetness of the Mossto help us do the fermentation process. And I'm just going to explain a little bit of the fermentation so it's a little bit more clear. When you have sugar during the fermentation process, you actually can have a better fermentation process because it's going to go really slow, and you can take it all the way to 46, 92, 96 hours, because if you just take the coffee, it will be fermented only for 8 hours, and then the rest of the time is going to be just sitting there. So basically the Mossto is like the actual gasoline that propels the fermentation process. After we finish the second fermentation process, we take the coffee to African beds for the drying process. It takes between 18 to 20 days sitting there until the humidity is down to 10.5%. When we have the humidity down to 10.5%, we move the coffee inside the warehouses just for final stabilization of the humidity. It takes between 5 to 7 days. Once the coffee is with the proper humidity point, we take it and we put them into the grain pro bags. And once we put them into the grain pro bags, we wait at least 10 more days to cup the coffee and to actually merge all the lots and to send the samples. So it takes almost 32 days between the time of the harvest up to the time that we send the samples.
Oh, it's amazing. It's a very time-consuming and complicated process. It's a labor of love. But the results are amazing. We're always so impressed with the quality of that coffee, particularly. But anything that really comes out of the project. I think it'd be interesting to talk a little bit about Mossto, because it's definitely something that it's a recurring theme across the origins. Without giving too much away, can you give a 30-second overview of what goes into Mossto? And I remember Edwin in Colombia giving a really interesting summary of it, but it'd be good to hear it from you too.
Yeah. Okay. Mossto. What's Mossto? Mossto is basically it's a crushed coffee juice that contains the skin and the mucilage of the coffee. So it's basically like a juice made of coffee. What we found on this is that they are used as enzymes that actually they can help us with the fermentation itself. So using the Mossto, we can have longer fermentation processes. We can actually enhance the chemical reaction of the fermentation process. And we found that with coffee, we were able to create this, the citric acidity that we have on the citrus sweetness coffees. So basically, it's really simple. Mossto it's a juice made of the coffee itself. We do a lot of lab analysis of this, and on top of that, we keep them we keep the Mossto only for one time. So whatever we do today, we use it tomorrow, and then we discard that.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Camilo. We had a question from Larry who was asking, are there any common mistakes that you see producers make, or is there one in particular that you see producers making, whether it's in processing, harvesting, relationships with exporters, anything like that?
It's one of the things that I have seen a lot working, in Colombia and then Costa Rica, Brazil, and Mexico. It's harvesting. So basically, harvesting it's a common error everywhere, because people don't realize like the necessity of having a good cherry for the entire process. And at the end, I'm always saying that every minute counts, because harvesting and then the whole processing of the coffee down to the export counts. So you need to pay attention on every single detail. But for me, harvesting, I have seen that is the common error that you see many farmers doing.
Is that mainly picking coffee too early, leaving it too late, not selectively picking enough? Is there anything in particular that you see that you think is the biggest of the errors, maybe?
Actually, because of the actual social pressures that many countries they have, many people, they just go and harvest green coffee. They don't actually wait for coffees to be on the right condition. Brazil is an example. In Colombia, we go over the same lot at least 14 to 18 times. In Brazil, when I arrived to Brazil, they were only doing this maybe 2-3 times. So they go and they harvest during a week. In Colombia, we stay harvesting at least 3 months. So
wow, it's a big difference. I guess for those at home who haven't seen coffee harvesting before, cherries will ripen at different stages throughout the that 3-month period, say in Colombia. So definitely makes sense. You know, if you can, if you have the resources and time to do it, to go and pick selectively over that period, and you get each cherry at its best moment.
Yeah, exactly.
We had a question from Tishin. So this is an interesting one. Do you ever work with coffee competitors? And if so, how would competitors source coffee from you?
You know, actually, I mean, I collaborate with many people. But at the end, you know, Santuario works with final consumers. So we have been developing really close relationships, you know, with our customers to be, you know, unique. So I mean, it's a tricky, you know, question, because I don't want to sound greedy, but you know, when you work 20 years developing, you know, all these processes, creating all these, you know, farms and everything, at the end we influence a lot of people in the right way. We have many people in Colombia that I help them. We have many people in Africa that I help them. I even had a guy from Ethiopia coming to Colombia only 2 days. So I gave him a complete analysis of my farm so he can actually take it back to Ethiopia and build his farm. But I mean, we don't do, you know, a lot of work like that, because I mean, it's difficult to do it, because it's a big responsibility for me, telling people to do things if I don't go and I don't, you know, actually know the conditions. But we just want to be, you know, really unique. We work directly with clients. We basically, I mean, we develop close relationships, and many people that when they come and they ask me that they want to work with me, basically they end up working with Santuario Project. So they end up being part of Santuario Project.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, you've got some really incredible long-term relationships, I know, and all around the world. Like you said, you've been producing for 22 years, I think 23 years, and you've had partners for almost that entire time. It's really amazing that you can you know, maintain and foster those relationships over such a big period. Do you have any advice for anyone who wanted to start a roasting business in order to help them establish long-term connections with producers? This is a question from Matt.
Yeah, actually, Matt, I think, you know, communication is the key for, you know, really good relationships, especially with producers, you know, like me or anyone around the world. A good example is 20 years ago when I started the business, I start a good relation with Intelligentsia, and they gave me a lot of feedback that helped me develop my business. And they also got a lot of info from my farms and from my production side that helped them actually, you know, enlighten their business as well. And like Intelligentsia, I had the same story in Japan. I've been working not with the same importer, but with the same roasters for almost 18 years. They keep buying the same, but basically it's good communication. So when you have good communication with, you know, your suppliers, you can actually have a good business going on. And not even if your business is totally new, I can say that you're going to have, you know, a really successful, you know, career if you decide to go into the roasting business.
Awesome, thank you. Is it fair to say, I mean, this is something that we certainly see being sort of the link between the roaster and the producer. That clear communication is so important, and it gives everyone assurances through the whole supply chain. If a roaster knows exactly what they want and they can tell you in advance, you can produce it to order, which means there's less risk for you producing a coffee that maybe you won't have a home for. And at the same time, the roaster knows that they're getting exactly what they've asked for at the price that they've already negotiated. So there's a lot more surety for everyone in the chain, which is really important, because I know that producing coffees like yours is not easy, and it's not cheap. So it's good to know that you've got someone who's already said, yes, I really want this coffee.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think we're running out of time, so maybe we'll do one more question from Jenna. As a producer, do you have a favorite varietal and why? Is it yield? Is it production? Is it cut profile? Or is it like trying to pick a favorite child? Too hard to say.
For me, it's Típica. Why Típica? Flavor is amazing, as good as the geisha coffee. I can say that. Típica gave me many championships at the beginning of my career in the States. Baristas and many people, they were using that. The flavors of Típica just is like a reminder of my coffees in Cauca. It's more like a romantic type of thing that I have with Típica, and you can, Típica can be as good as a geisha or a Típica. It's really good. It's an overall good quality coffee. The only minus that you can say about Típica is production. Kind of tricky, kind of difficult, but at the end you need to have it, basically.
Yeah, agreed. It's really incredible. Some of the Típicas, particularly we've cut from your farm in Santuario, has been really incredible. Really beautiful coffees. Well, I think on that note, we might have to wrap it up here. But thank you so much for coming on, Camilo. Really appreciate your time. For those at home, if you wanted to learn anything more about Camilo, the Santuario Project generally, or any of Camilo's farms, you can find him on Instagram at the Santuario Project. Or if you're interested in looking for any of his coffees here in Australia, please get in touch with someone in the Condesa team. Again, Camilo, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot, and it's been great fielding some questions from some of our roasters and clients here from you about all the great work you're doing. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, and I'll be here if you need me.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.